Again, coming in every Thursday to help you get your people right in your business. So we're always coming forward every Thursday with educational kind of means to try and help you and support you. If you're a business owner, if you're a manager, director, ops manager, finance manager, supervisor, to actually help and support you in managing the biggest, most expensive, and most complex asset in your business, your people. So today, what we want to go through today is actually a really big topic. So I think this could be a bigger training program that we'll put on later on in due course, because this can definitely be expanded out, and I think it really does need to be as well. But there are some really core elements that we need to kind of run through for all of you when you're considering managing difficult people. Now, in the world that we've worked in, we come across unique, shall I say, different, challenging people in the working environment that always offer up some of the most complex situations that you could imagine, ranging from, obviously people that kind of put forward and present their situation and circumstances, but they never listen and take on board the stuff that you're actually telling them. I mean, we've got a case in the past where we had an individual who was obviously going through a difficult process with their manager, despite the fact, one of the things we always say, by the way, when you're managing anybody, is when you're following up on those kind of informal one-to-ones, those conversations, is to offer back a synopsis, an email that goes over some of the bits and pieces that you've discussed. So following our meeting today, blah, 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 blah. So that if they disagree with any of that, they come back to you. Otherwise, it's kind of agreed and approved that is an accurate interpretation of the meeting that's taken place. And I remember in this particular circumstance, this person just wasn't actually resonating that had ever happened. Those emails had ever taken place, was transforming and changing the topics of the conversations, what individuals had said, what they hadn't said, that had been misled or misinterpreted in different bits and pieces in different ways. You never sent me this documentation. You never sent me this letter. You never sent me this invite, and these different bits and pieces. When quite clearly, there's some things you just can't back away from, that they either did or they didn't happen. You either did send that email, you either did send that letter, you either did give that synopsis on that meeting, or you didn't. And you get all these weird and quirky, complex situations that do come up, whether it be around sickness absence, whether it be around performance, conduct, you name it. These things always come up. One thing you're guaranteed of having in business is you're guaranteed that you'll need people. That's the first one. So yeah, okay, I get there's one-man bands out there and people that operate on their own, and that's great and that's groovy for you. But to expand and to grow and to scale, you need people. You're just not going to be able to do that without people. So you need people. The more people you get, the more likelihood there is that statistically you're going to get more people problems. It's just virtue and part and parcel of what you're trying to do. And there's ways and means around that and trying to reduce the impact of that and the statistical likelihood of those things happening for you. But evidently, we always talk about this is what we call dead wood in a business. And by that, what I don't mean is a derogatory sense that they're surplus to requirements. I always have to caveat this. What I am meaning is we view your business in the same light as a tree that's growing. And as a tree grows, as it develops, it has to shed dead wood. Dead wood is a poisonous thing on a tree and its growth, and it'll stunt it or kill it. So it has to shed the dead wood. That happens in business. It's a natural process. You can get people that relationships are always looking for long-term relationships, but that doesn't mean it's a forever and a day relationship. Some relationships still naturally come to a conclusion, even if it is a long-term one. But at the end of the day, you tend to find you get a case of either that, difficult staff that are causing difficult problems, or potentially you're getting individuals that are the wrong person in the wrong role in the wrong business, in which case that's on you because you put them there, not them. They've never changed. They've always been that person. And therefore, if you're keeping them around and you're not taking action, then that's equally on you, because then you know you have dead wood, yet you're keeping it around in your business, which is, as we just said, something that's going to stunt your growth and hold you back. So managing difficult people is a big thing. It happens in every business. I think it's unlikely in this day and age that, to be honest with you, you're going to come across a working environment when you're employing people that you're not going to have difficult people that you're going to have to manage. It's a part and parcel of this process. So the first thing that we always talk about is you need to recognize that if this is the case, if this is the circumstance you're facing right now, the last thing you should ever do is bury your head in the sand. So we always talk about the difference between an active manager and a damager. And a damager is the opposite to an active manager, not inactive. It's a damager because you think you're doing the right things, but in actual fact, what you're doing is wrong and is causing complications. It's hurting the business in the long run. And that's the worst place to be because you think you're doing the right thing, but really you're doing something that's really going to harm the business. And that's not what you actually want to be achieving and doing at all. But in this thing, we need to make sure you can't bury your head in the sand. That is what a damager would do, and it would cause long-term complications. You need to understand you have to take action. So when you identify that you're dealing with a difficult person, difficult person can mean different things as well, by the way. It doesn't mean that it's fallen into the realms of a performance issue or other bits and pieces like conduct. It could just be that they're just a particularly difficult person to have a relationship with. But either way, it still falls into that same category because if a relationship isn't working, that's not going to change. You're not going to change this person. Stop trying to change people. It won't work in the working environment. But what you do want to do is try and see how you can actually move that forward. It could be a case it's the wrong person in the wrong role, wrong business, right? So we need to be able to take action to move this progressively forward. Sitting on it is like sitting on a ticking time bomb. It's going to blow up at some point in time. So you want to be able to take those precautions now to try and help and secure you in managing that in the long term. Action is the biggest thing you need to do here. When you are faced with difficult people, it's often something you're afraid of taking that action. You're afraid of that consequence. You're afraid of what could and couldn't happen. And you weigh it up. You're afraid of, if I do this, what's going to be the outcome in the long term on the business? Am I going to fall into some kind of legal loophole that I've not foreseen? Is this person just going to make things even worse? If I actually start taking action, they're difficult enough as it is, and it's quiet. If I start doing something about it, are they going to get worse? Is this going to take up more of my time? I don't have that capacity to spare on these different bits and pieces. And what I always say to people is if you don't have that time, you don't have that capacity, if you're afraid right now, just imagine what that's going to be like, but 10 times worse moving forward into the future because you've done nothing now. Whatever you're avoiding now by not taking action, you're going to be starting at some point, probably at the very early stages, the embryonic stages of managing somebody, maybe 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, maybe 18 months down the road. And you would have borne the brunt of this and just carried on with this problem and shoved it under the carpet for a long period of time, done nothing with it. At some point, you're going to have to take action, whether it's now or 2 years down the road. You're going to have to take some action on this particular issue. So now is the best time to be taking that action. If you're recognizing that there's a problem there, now's the time to be taking that action. I think also we need to understand, as managers, what is that particular problem? What is causing the angst? What's causing the issues? Is it a case that it's not working, it's not blending within the business? Or is it the case that in actual fact, there isn't a problem and it could be that it's the manager that's managing the person that could be the problem? So you need to understand categorically what you're looking at. And we'll come on to that point in a minute. But you need to be able to confront the confrontation. All too often, one of the biggest problem we find for managers is the fear. It's the fear factor of, to be honest with you, you're a manager, you're probably great at what you do. You develop and manufacture widgets. You could be the widget manufacturing expert. You could be all singing, all dancing when it comes to widgets. And that's great. And that's where your skill sets lie. But as you go up in the hierarchy of an organization, the higher up you go, the more your role transforms from managing the widgets to managing the people that develop the widgets. So it's a skill set that sometimes is just outside of that comfort zone for a lot of people. And I think until you've got more experience of that, that's always going to be something that's there. And hopefully, fingers crossed, you're not dealing with these kind of situations on a regular basis. Hopefully these aren't reoccurring nightmares that you've just got a whole team full of really difficult, complicated people. So in that sense of things, we get very fearful of what could happen. What's the person's reaction going to be? How are they going to react following these particular meetings? Is it going to be positive? Is it going to be negative? Everything we just spoke about time consumption, these people, Deadwood will be zapping your time. There'll be a sponge on that and taking all of that away from you. So you need to make sure that you're not backing down because you're afraid. No one likes confrontation at the end of the day either, by the way. No one wants, I mean, you've got to be a bit crazy, really, to go, I want to go to work and I really want to get in an argument with someone. This is going to be amazing. What a day. No one's going to be looking forward to that, but you can't avoid it. Avoiding it is another method of taking no action. And if you're taking no action, then you're damaging the business. You've got to remember that equation. You've got to be able to confront the confrontation, not back down from it. So in that sense of things, you need to be prepared. You need to know that potentially, yes, when you're dealing with difficult people, it's highly likely you're probably going to get a bit of confrontation. But you shouldn't back down from the actions you've got to take because of that. You should actively plan and pursue what you've got to do regardless of that. We also need to make sure that we're planning, that we're strategizing. What is the problem you're facing? I always think about things about putting them into a box. What box am I in with this particular person? And people can be in multiple boxes at the same time. So you might have someone who's got capability issues. You might have somebody who has sickness issues. Maybe they've got long-term or short-term sickness issues. You might have people that have conduct issues. You might have people that have raised a grievance around a process. People that have raised grievance around bullying and harassment activities that are taking place. Maybe even against you or the line manager themselves. They could fall into multiple categories. Sometimes it seems like it's all at the same time. So one of the great examples of that is when you're managing performance. And I always talk about when you're managing performance, when you read a policy about that, it's a straight line. So you go from A to Z, and you've got some stopping points in the middle, but pretty much it's a straight line. Reality check, it's never a straight line. Hardly ever do you get a straight line. So when you're managing performance is always subjective. What I think is good, you may think is bad, and the manager may think is completely shite. So at the end of the day, you've got to make sure that you're understanding that it's a fluid concept, and it's not always everyone's going to be on the same page at the same time. And when you're managing performance, people can go sick with stress, work-related stress, be upset by the circumstances. They may raise a grievance around the manager because they feel they're being bullied and harassed in the workplace. You've got to go through that particular process, investigate it, bring them back to work from their sickness absence, still continue to try and manage the performance. You can be in multiple boxes at the same time, which means you're following multiple policies. And it's important to know which stage, at which point, am I in which box and what am I meant to be doing? That's always important. And when we're looking at planning and strategizing, we're looking at what is the possibility of what could happen. And we must always, and it's not just playing lip service to this, be looking to see how we can support people in the workplace, because at the end of the day, it's better for them and it's more beneficial for you if you can support them to get to the level and to where you need them to be, or to make those transitions from behaviors that potentially are not right, that's causing this friction for them to be a difficult person in your working environment. So we want to be able to build up some kind of plan, some kind of strategy. In an ideal world, you'll have the straight line process. In a reality and in a real world, it may not go that way. So what could happen and what's going to be the actions and the follow through from that point of view? So you can make sure that you're taking the right actions at the right time, that you've got principles and steps you're going to put in place to help and support at each of those places, or each of those break-off points, those milestones as you're working through. You want to make sure that you're not backing down and fearful of the confrontation that may envelop as you start to try and manage this. And you need to be mindful of, you need to play the game in front of you. And that's kind of, I know that's a sports analogy, but we use that quite a lot. So sometimes you can get off into the hypothetical of why people are doing things, why they've said this, why they've done that, why didn't they do this. You need to just work on what is in front of you, what has actually happened, what do you actually know, and what are we actually working through to build that strategy and that plan. So what you can't do is you want to think about what are the possibilities of what could happen, but you don't want to start trying to second guess. Well, why did Johnny say that? I think Johnny said that because Johnny's upset with something that's happening at home in his home life, and something else happened around his granny, and blah, 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 blah. It makes no difference. At the end of the day, you don't know what's happening in that person's head. Stop trying to second guess that and actually just focus on playing the game on the facts of what you do actually know and what is actually in front of you, and play on that rather than these kind of things and spurious kind of analogies of what you think people are thinking about and doing and why they're acting in the particular way. At the end of the day, if we're looking at mental health and other bits and pieces and support mechanisms we can put in place, we've got occupational health and GPs to help with that. They're the medical experts on those different bits and pieces, rather than us trying to second guess that. That's what we need to be looking at. We need to focus on what's in front of us. What data do we have? What information do we have to hand? And what are the implications of that? What is likely to happen? What is unlikely to happen? What could happen? And build your strategy and your plan. And then the last thing is we want to make sure that we remain focused. It's really easy when we're going through this to see them. You can imagine this is a small kind of video that we're doing at the moment as a live session, as a tutorial. But this has got to be something that's got to be bigger, right? We've got to look at this in a bigger light, because already you can see there's so many different things you've got to think about as a manager. There's so many different activities that could or couldn't happen that could impact on your decision-making process, what the outcomes could be. I mean, we're living in a very litigious world these days. So what are the legal repercussions of what you're doing? Do you have the expertise? Are you doing this in isolation on your own? All these different bits and pieces we probably need to look at. But the biggest one really that I want to come across is, well, first of all, taking action is the biggest one. But after that is probably making sure you remain focused, because it's very easy to get all consumed in this is taking up so much time. It's taking up so much energy. It's removed me from doing what I actually should be doing to such a big degree in my life. It's making me feel stressful. It's making me feel anxious when I'm coming to work, thinking that I've got to tackle this and deal with this when I don't really want to. I've got to face up and confront the confrontation, but it's not comfortable to do that. Maybe that's way out of my comfort zone in trying to manage that process. But if you let that go, if you don't focus, if you don't make sure you're following this through from the beginning to the end, and sometimes these can be longer journeys. Sometimes it's not necessarily that you're just doing this and it's over the space of a month that this is taking place. Sometimes it could be taking place over 6 months, a year, maybe even longer before you get to that conclusion. There is always light at the end of that tunnel. And one of the things I always say to people is sometimes when you're actually in the thick of it and it's actually happening, it can feel like you're being run over by a lawnmower. It hurts as hell. It's not comfortable. You don't want to be there. But being run over by the lawnmower is not forever. It's not going to be going on all the time. So what you've got to remember is there is light at the end of that tunnel. Whilst you're in it, whilst you're being run over by that lawnmower, it doesn't feel like there's freaking light at the end of that tunnel. You don't believe it, but there is. And things do change and they do transition. That's why we always talk to people about managing that dead wood. You've got to take that action. You've got to do it now, because you're going to get some pain somewhere. And it's better to get it done now, because the longer you delay it, the more painful it's going to be. But there is a solution at the end of that. That's the point of that strategy, that plan. You can plan and you can see where that conclusion point can be potentially in the future. So you've got to make sure that you're focused. Don't let up once you start taking that action. Don't fall into the comfort zone of, I don't want to take action. I don't want to go down that road of confronting the confrontation. Thank you very much. It's so much easier for me not to come into work to have to deal with that and deal with these difficult people. So in that sense of things, you've got to make sure you remain focused. Everyone, thank you so much. If you're watching this video back, you're watching it live, I fully appreciate your time. I fully appreciate you being here. We have a fantastic service. I just really want to go across really quickly. I'm just going to bring it up. It's called the HR Lite. The HR Lite service, it helps us to cover so much, especially for organizations where you're not quite at that point of looking to outsource your HR for a done-for-you service. This is an excellent service that works alongside you. So you have access to our full wealth of templates and policies, which we're always growing. As you can tell, sessions like this and more go onto the platform regularly. So we're always updating every week, every month. So that value that we've got on there is valued at £21,525. This time next year, it's going to be more. So we can increase that value. This thing's always going to go up in value, but the cost that you potentially pay every month is always going to stay the same. So for 12 months, 197 plus VAT per month, you get access to all of these services that are listed on there. Plus, you get access potentially to our partners. You do have to pay extra for our partner services, unfortunately, but you only have to pay for them when you use them. And there's regularly updating training here. If you don't train, you cannot maintain your skill level as a manager, and neither can your staff or your managers. If you want to be able to build a sustainable business and you recognize the value of the people in your business and the impact they can have on your business, then you must look to seek to regularly train and maintain. We've got a whole raft of different training programs that are on there already that you can get your teeth into straight away as soon as you sign on. And obviously, from that point of view, so can your managers and supervisors, to make sure that they are enhancing that skill and making the most of it, to be able to make sure that when they do get those difficult people, they can manage it effectively. But when they are getting those nuanced questions and they need further help and support, we're here to provide that for you. In the corner is a QR code that has the link on there to take you across to the management trial. That's the training we did last week. Takes you to the HR Lite service. So please feel free, get your cameras out, take a picture of that. Go through to that link, and obviously you can learn a bit more about that from there. I just want to say thank you to everyone for today. I hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll be seeing you again